I'm a clinical psychologist. I work in New York. I'm semi-retired, and I was trained as a focusing-oriented therapist. I developed a relationship with Gene. Both of us did toward the end of his life, and we had a number of conversations about the topic that we're covering today, which is what can focusing contribute to changing society, to making it more the way we would want it to be. And I think this today was sparked partly by some comments by Rosa already about what it would mean to have a society where the goal is, the word that was used in that session was where people are able to come to their full maturity or their full development as human beings. I remember Gene saying that we are at a very primitive state socially, which I think I can occur with. But Gisela was very concerned that we not just, and I'll let her speak for herself, but that we not just think that it's just a matter of focusing, where there need to be changes in how the structures of our society and how we can combine. My concern is how we combine bringing about those changes with the kind of consciousness and awareness that focusing can give us and help us to become less alienated from each other. And with that, I turn it over to Gisela.
Mm-hmm. Hello, I am a focusing trainer and have been in close contact with Gene, especially during the latter part of his life, and had many discussions about philosophy and also about the political. And I would like to rephrase what Rosa said. According to my memory, she asked, what would a society be that brings out the good in people? Is that right, Charles?
Yes, that was one way of saying it, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, how do we overcome the bad in people?
Yeah. But first, I said, and that is a key point I have repeated many times with people I spoke to, is what is a society? We need to understand that. And we also need to expand our focusing. And Gene said that we live in a structural political context, and it helps to self ourselves in it. Structural political context, that is the society. The society is more than just our individual social interactions. How I interact with employer, cashier at the supermarket, my landlord, etc. That is that personal realm. But society is more than that. And society is more than an assembly of individuals who live in the same country. Society is structured. And it's structured in a certain way around economics, around the political structure. And we need to understand that as my most important point when we discuss this. So I'm very concerned about that. And Katharina, maybe you can bring up the slide with another quote by Gene about the political, spiritual, and focusing. If you can, otherwise I quote it by heart.
And then I'll have it up. Okay.
Gene said, the realm of politics, spirituality, and focusing or any other inward practice are usually dealt with separately. but they are all one implicitly and in need of each other. That part is important, in need of each other. So that means focusing needs the political realm and the spiritual. Today we are going to deal with the political, and focusing, in my eyes, by the way, is inherently spiritual. So maybe you read that, see it on your screen. Yeah, the three different realms, they must come together, nor can any of them be reduced to the other two, however overarching each may be. Although different, they are in need of each other. Maybe that is enough for now as an introduction to our discussion. I have another point. Focusing alone is not enough. We can focus on our individual situations, but for understanding society, study is needed. And that is more than focusing. Any questions?
I'm wondering what we really mean by study, because that could mean so many things and does to so many people.
Mm-hmm. Study means trying to understand and read about what we want to understand, and having critical thinking about it.
Let me give an example from my own personal.
Yeah.
Of course, I went to college, and I went to Berkeley in the 60s, and then I went to Hunter. And of course, I learned lots of things in college, but I also became a member of the Socialist Party. And I got a whole different education in the Socialist Party. I learned about labor history. I learned about Marx. I learned about the way our society functions, things that were not really taught for the most part in a standard education. We need to take our education into our own hands, pull books from the shelves, get together and study and discuss. Jean once said to me, "Oh, back in the day, workers got together in circles and studied and read together, and they never would have fallen for Trump because they knew what the reality, social reality was, and they had learned it." So we need books, and we need thinkers, and Jean also used to say we need to know about economics, and we need to talk to economists. So study means literally that: study, read, learn, discuss, educate yourself. That I believe Gisela and I both, we agree on that. Is that right, Gisela?
Oh, yes. And we can also ask ourselves what I'm reading here. How does it resonate with what I know already? Does it
Yes.
disagree? We need a
Yes.
critical evaluation of what we are reading and
Yes.
sense into it in a focusing way as well.
Right. So read in a pausing way. Say, oh,
Yeah.
what do I think? Does this resonate for me? So that's the focusing element that we bring to.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just passively taking in what others have written.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Lynn?
In part, but I think in my experience, the friends that I have who agree with me politically all read the same books. And then I have other people in my life who read completely different books. And one group looks at one kind of news, and the other looks at another kind of news. And they have absolutely no idea of the things that the other people are reading, and there's no cross
Mhm.
conversation, just people yelling at each other, but not really trying to understand. So I think even with focusing can help me resonate with what I'm reading. But if there is many other ways of understanding it, focusing won't necessarily bring them to me without dialogue with, I mean, that's why we're trying to do in the community empowerment, the dialogue across difference.
Mhm.
Yes, well, dialogue across differences is where if we can't talk to people with different points of view.
Mhm.
So yes, okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
We need to understand what ideology is produced in our society. Ideology in the sense of manipulation toward an end. We need to learn to understand where is somebody coming from and in what interest.
There's always a method that Paulo Freire used when educating he wrote the book of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he would bring to poor people in Brazil clippings, editorials from 3 different papers, a conservative paper, a leftist paper, some other kind of paper, and would say this same event was described and talked about in 3 different ways by these 3 different points of view. How do we make sense of that? How do we understand why they see things differently and have come? So this was to stimulate critical thinking and not just indoctrination. We're not talking about indoctrination. We're talking about thinking critically. And yes, what does Ayn Rand say about this? And why is that so different from what somebody else might say? That's good. That's important, especially since a thinker like Ayn Rand has influenced a lot of people. And maybe she has a point or two. We have to be open.
Yeah.
We have talked, Lynn, about how we sometimes have wave flags, and that we really want to open doors because that's really ultimately going to produce something new. And when we just wave our flags, we get nothing new. So that yes, openness. So that's actually a theme. Well, let's see how we can do this, because to me, let's see how we can do this. We need. I think, Gisela, you're going to want to present some of what you see as the things that seem crucial to be aware of about our society. And I've been interested in how the way in which we go about trying to make change, because I think all too often attempts to change society have led to a new form of domination. I think we all know that. So how can we keep these realms that Jean was talking about alive and open? Can we start maybe with, this was meant to just be introduction. We're getting right into the smack in the middle of it. We were going to maybe start with John Lennon's visionary song, Imagine, right?
I would like to say something before that, please.
Okay.
From this past 10 minutes, I think we need to develop a method that includes focusing, how to read and study, and how to think critically,
Mm-hmm.
and how to detect the ideology behind something that comes our way in the news or in a paper or in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And to develop that method would be very exciting for me, together
Mhm.
with some other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe say that back, that you, if I can say it, or somebody else could say it, that it's a matter of developing a method in a way of critical thinking, and how we can detect is, I'll say it in my words here, a theory or ideas don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a
Yes.
particular context. So we need to think critically about that too. I remember a quote from Marx: social existence determines social consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So wherever, and that includes ourselves. So what is our social existence, and how does it determine our consciousness? Not as an answer, but as a question. Something to
Yeah.
think about.
I have an
Something to think.
example about racism regarding that. I
Mm,
came to realize only lately, in the last year or so, that I, as a white person, feel comfortable in any setting in the world. I never have the feeling I don't belong here. That's also due to being educated, of course.
you know,
But and I understood, as a colored person, people often feel they don't belong. They feel odd, and that never occurred to me before.
it's interesting. It was very eye-opening for me to watch a video about birders. You know, people who like to go out watching birds. It was a black man talking about what it's like to be a black birder, and how white people can go into different areas and look at birds. A black person always has me think they're going to suspect that I'm intruding. They might shoot me because I'm out here looking at birds, and they're going to think that I'm, somehow shouldn't be here. So that's an example. And it never occurred to me that if I were black, I would not be able to go out birding and without fear that somebody was going to attack me. So this is a very concrete example of what you're talking about. And that's, of course, not just birding, but I thought that was so amazing. He talked about never wear a hoodie. He said, never wear a hoodie. Absolutely never wear a hoodie to go out birding if you're black.
Would never occur to us as whites. Yeah.
Never wear a hoodie if I want to.
I have chosen. Sorry.
Yeah, we're getting, and we haven't let anybody else talk. But I wanted to do the little attunement too. But Alistair, go ahead.
Thanks. There's just something I wanted to mention. That I heard. I think Buckminster Fuller talked about a world that works for everyone, and that's the sort of vision that doesn't often get mentioned. We think of fixing this problem or that problem, and in some ways, it might actually be easier to try to fix all of them. Because, and I mean that's something that we can discuss for weeks and months. But it's just something I wanted to mention.
Yeah. Sometimes having the whole picture makes it easier to solve the problems. Is that what you're saying? We try to fix this problem and that problem, but sometimes we need to look at the whole picture, and maybe that way we find an answer that we wouldn't have found just focusing on this or that.
Yes. Thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing, Gisela, when you spoke about your experience before Charles gave the concrete example, I really felt something very deep about your share, like an awareness in you of an awareness in you of not being aware of something. And it was like you made a pause there that I felt it in me, like, wow, what an incredible moment of awareness for you. You know, like I almost wanted to stay there with you. It was really interesting, like my bodily experience as you said that. Like I just wanted to kind of pause and stay with you. You know, like and maybe like now I'm thinking like, why did I viscerally, like what in me experience your pause as you said what you said? And there was a sincerity in your, like a real deep sincerity. Like I was not aware, you said, and then you paused and then you said something else, right? And it happened to me when an African-American friend said to me, I know that you're aware of a lot, but I want you to experience it. And we went to a restaurant and they asked me what I wanted, right? And then we went to a store and they let me roam around the store, but they asked her to carry like a little bag. They wanted to curtail her movements. Oh my God, it was like an incredible, it was experiential. It wasn't just about being told. And you know, what's interesting is I consider myself a woman of color, but here I was not. She wanted to experience the difference between me as a woman of color so that I could see my privilege against her inability to be, you know? And I think your pause kind of took me to like took me to my body and then to experiential kind of experiences of what you said means, that awareness of not being aware. That's, I think, what
Oh, there you go. The awareness of not being aware. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. There might be more areas than that we are not aware. Yeah, that is,
almost
it's all
certainly.
pervasive, that phenomenon. We just have an example.
Yeah. Should we go into the beginning of our talk?
You mean imagine the poem?
Well,
Or
I
the
thought we
attunement? Attunement is...
yeah, the attunement. Do you want to do the song, or do you want to listen? Do we have a recording of the song? We listen. Nice to hear the song sung, although it can just be read. It's also sometimes maybe reading it, you get more of the actual word. You don't just hear the beauty of. They play the song on the radio, and I sometimes wonder, do people actually listen to what John Lennon is saying?
Yes. I wanted it to be read, just the words, because music can carry you away because it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have the words? Do we have the words?
Yeah, I have the words. I'll read.
Want to put them up, or you want to read them? Read them.
I'll read them. And I so agree with you that as I read them to myself last night, it's like I was hearing them for the first time. I agree with you about the music sweeping you away, which is wonderful too, but this is a different experience. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace.
Imagine no possession. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Thank you.
It flows quite naturally to the attunement, actually, I think. So let's take a moment to receive those words and what it would mean to live in such a world. Without possessions, without countries, without religion even. The religion that divides us, that makes us kill each other, not to love each other. Just living here and now in this world together as one. I'm going to do the attunement. It's very simple. I learned it from Marshall Rosenberg. It requires being quiet and still for a moment, pausing and asking this simple question. How in my heart of hearts do I want to connect with and relate to other people? Not what I was taught, not what I was educated to do or think. How do I want to be in this world with other people? Letting that fill you, letting that flow, letting that inspire your actions. Letting it guide you in how you think and how you converse and how you dialogue, how you think about what changes need to happen, what thoughts and ideas carry forward this sense of how you want to be. I think this is something we can come back to over and over again and ask, how do I want to be? How do I want to be here now as we have this discussion? How do I want to listen? How do I want to be present? And we can proceed from there, I think. Do you want to share your thoughts, further thoughts, Gisela, on the structures that, on the changes that need to happen in your mind, and how we can have a dialogue about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. We do not have so much time, so it is the key points of whatever I have studied throughout my life in discussions with philosophers, theologians. My friend, who was a former professor of mine of philosophy, Marxist philosopher, and to say that that's a word that's difficult, Marxism. I want to say first, Marxism is not what happened in the Soviet Union, in the German Democratic Republic, what happens in China. No. That's indoctrinated into us to call that communist or Marxist. It's not, yeah. And what I would like to envisage is not that sort of dictatorship. I just want to make that clear so that nobody thinks, oh, she's a Marxist. No, yeah. Charles, you make a worried face.
No, not at
No?
all. No.
Okay. The main point I said already is that a society is more than an assembly of individuals under a government. A society has a structure, and that structure is one of hierarchy and power over. We need to recognize that. And that hierarchy and power over can be seen in many, many ways. The essence of it is our society worldwide, practically, is exploitative. Companies are in need in this system to make as much money as possible and to increase, to grow. Increase sales, increase profits. That can be only done by exploiting other humans and exploiting nature. And yeah, that sounds like a dogma now. I just want to state it from all what I know. And it's competitive throughout. Companies compete with each other, countries compete with each other, and people compete with each other for a higher pay in the job, for a career. They compete for jobs. And they are competing for better marks in school. It goes right through, down to kindergarten. And another society would be, as John Lennon said, people sharing all the world, non-competitive, except as who can throw farther than me or something like that. Child play, a healthy competition that just weighs out who is the better one without any dire consequences. Competition is very important because it forces companies to increase their profits. Otherwise, they go under. In this competitive system, I can go bankrupt if I don't compete well with my competitor. So even if I, with all my human good intentions, was the owner of a company or part of the board of directors, I would need to act according to this system that forces me to compete. So it's a question of the system. I don't know if this is easily understood or taken in, but it's the essence of what I have come to as a conclusion. Competition. And what was the exploitation? I also became aware that the wealth of Europe is based on former colonialism and based on the current neo-imperialist structure we have in the world up to now. I also know that I, as a member of the European Union, or if I was American or Canadian, same thing, I am privileged in this world. I'm grateful for that. And I know that my life is a lot better than that of many, many more people. And it would be wonderful if we stopped our wars, our exploitative system, meaning capitalism. And in the process model, Jean always talks about stoppage. When something comes to a stoppage, something new can develop. And he had a great confidence that something new, something that carries forward can develop. Something we never had. And that is what I would like. Something that is neither the so-called communist system and neither capitalism, but something different. Okay, that's what I have to say so far.
Since you won't find any disagreement from me with any of that, I'm curious whether anybody else has.
Yeah.
I, in taking all this in, what's been coming up for me is along our ingrained structures, political, economic, I have this sense of this society, this worldwide society that's forming or has formed alongside these ingrained structures, given our technological advancements. There is a kind of oneness that technology has given us that allows for some ubiquity, that our society is somehow, just by virtue of knowing what one end of the world is doing and the other, there is some kind of ubiquity that's occurring in a digital fashion. Our younger people have in their DNA a whole different way of perceiving and participating in the world than I do. And I'm just curious, because I don't know, how is this digital society crossing with our ingrained societal structures and institutions? And might there be some kind of carrying forward that we're not aware of right now?
I
That's
have a couple.
my curiosity.
I have a couple of thoughts in response to that. But the last one just occurred to me just now, which is that Gene was always talking about how he thought there was a new awareness emerging in the world. That focusing was just one of many groups that were inching toward a new consciousness, a new awareness, which I might be expressed in a Lennon song. But your earlier point, I was, my father was an historian of Spanish history. I was reading his book about the 18th century and the French Revolution, and how the Spanish government tried to keep the Spanish people from knowing what was happening in France during the French Revolution. They tried, and they succeeded to some extent. The Pyrenees, France and Spain border on each other. There's a mountain range called the Pyrenees. Oh, today that would be utterly impossible. There would have been no way to keep the Spanish people from knowing what was happening in France during the French Revolution. They didn't keep people in Spain from knowing forever, but for a while, they were able to keep the Spaniards in ignorance about events in France happening just the other side. We live in a totally different world. In that sense, we are one, because we all know what's happening in the world. Although Gisela might argue with me that even there, not all the news gets that fit the print gets printed or gets covered, or our awareness is even there, we are kept from knowing certain things, even in our world. But there is a way that we are digitally connected in a way that we never have been before.
Mhm. Yes,
Which I
it's
guess
an
raises possibilities.
important point to raise. Yeah.
I guess that raises possibilities that we could
Mhm.
take advantage of. Right? Anyway, go on. Yes.
Astrid?
I around the digital connectedness, I'm not quite as optimistic, since the internet can be used like in the People's Republic of China, or Putin's success in hiding certain opinions from his people as a whole. We have deep fake, we have I don't know how to say it in English, algorithms that that support very conservative perspectives to the disadvantage of a lot of minorities or people of color, women, and it accelerates the gap even more. So I'm very, and that brings me to another point. I felt like when I have this imagine on my door, and the song, and I feel like without religion, without countries, it would need, and that's where focusing comes in, it would need a high level of bodily awareing continuously, because in this song, it knocks off a lot of the anchors. A lot of people feel like, I am a European, or I am an American, I am this, I am that. So you would need a lot of bodily awareing. So we would need a lot of education, because I don't think that otherwise people could sustain a lifestyle like that. So that's where I feel focusing is a political, for me, focusing is a political activity.
So beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah. I like your term bodily awareing.
as a verb.
Process.
As a verb.
Yes.
And you're pointing to all the ways that we can be manipulated and information can be with modern means. It isn't only leading to greater awareness, it can lead to greater manipulation as well.
And Astrid, I really appreciate a lot of what you said. And I felt too that it's up to us. When I hear people in my family, let's say, or friends talking in ways that are misinformed or have information that is fake, there's one website that you could go and look at data, to clear misinformation. And I've been looking at that link, but also just speaking with them and sharing with them some of that. And I think the more that we individually educate and do things with the people we know, I know I might not be able to reach everybody, but I am going to reach the people I love and clarify some misinformation that they may have.
I'd like to come in here about the song. I've never, I don't think, verbalized this, but it came so strongly to me that I always have a misgiving about this song, and a misgiving about the way that we hold it. And then when I say we, who do I mean by the we? All of those who love this song, sort of like a marching anthem. But for me, the word ideology and the word exploitation needs to be grounded in what it points to. And we always think of ideology as something that the other people have, not us. We have, right? All of our values are ideology. And I think what gives me misgivings about the song is the understanding or the idea that we can live without religion. And religion, I don't mean as the narrow sense of the word, but the large sense of the word, which includes atheism as a religion and focusing as a religion, that expression of personal values that may be different than other people's personal values, and personal intentions of where we're going and what we want as different than other people's. The whole idea that we cannot have any possessions if we think of possessions in the larger sense of the word. So I think that my conclusion up till now is that the enemy is the us against them mentality, and it is in the same way. If I write a song about imagine a world where there isn't us against them, somebody will say that can't be, because you have to have a them to have an us, or something like that, and that it's so complex. I think I'll stop there because I want to hear other people's thoughts about that.
Just very briefly, Lynn, I think your points are really well taken. I don't think it's just opinions. I think, like, for instance, workers were organizing for more human treatment and by Amazon, or workers that are working in Starbucks and are trying to get a decent wage. These are not just ideologies or ideas. These are concrete living conditions that people are struggling to change, to make them meet their needs, not just so that makes sense. That it's not just, we're not just debating ideas, that people are living in concrete situations that they're trying to change to make their lives better. It's not just an idea.
Yes, absolutely. And those and the fighting, it feels to me that the fighting for liberation isn't something that you do and then you have a revolution and then you have a different world and then nobody has to fight.
Right, it doesn't work that way.
The fighting for liberation is something that we do ongoing, right? And having lived through, the women's movement and the gay movement and the Vietnam, the anti-war movement, and just seeing how these movements manifest, I feel like I'm I'm really knowing something about that process.
Yes, absolutely. Concretely in your lived experience. Okay.
I want to say something about that word ideology. What I meant is to recognize it. That means recognize it in what do I fall for easily, unaware, and to train that ability to recognize.
And to be always examining our own ideologies and being curious about other people's ideologies rather than thinking of them only as misinformed.
Yes. Take them seriously.
And Jean would say, well, how did they come to think this way?
Oh, Lynn, can I say something to that real quick? As you were speaking and as Gisela was speaking, I was thinking, so I had reached out to Lynn because I wanted to create a course on existential humanistic psychotherapy, because there's 3 branches: the psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, the cognitive behavioral, and then the existential humanistic is ignored at the university. So I've been 3 years trying, and then I reached out to Lynn, and Lynn said, oh, call this person, some people I knew, and focusing. And then I created the course on existential humanistic. The faculty absolutely loved it. Everybody was really excited. And then my dean, who's really an amazing person, I don't want to demonize her in any way because she's really a great person. I'm sure she's getting orders from someone, said the course is wonderful, but it cannot have the word existential.
Why?
Oh my God, Lynn, I went through such a crisis. I was going to call you. And I wrote, everybody's like, Anesi, calm down. We're totally with you. I said, it's like having a hamburger with cheese and saying, don't say cheese. Only can say hamburger. Or, you know, like I just could not grasp it. Anyway, it took me a while, did lots of focusing with myself, and I gave them 3 titles, none of which had the word existential. But I could keep the existential content. But anyway, so I finally gave it to her, but by mistake, I gave it to her with the word existential, but backwards, humanistic, existential, right? So she said, no, Anessa, you have the word existential. You can't put it in there, change it. So I went back, changed it, and then gave her a summary that was existential, but could not have the word existential.
Why not? Why not have the word existential? I'm totally baffled.
Anyway, I'll tell you why. I mean, I have a feeling why, but what I did was, everybody told me, leave the course alone. It's beautiful. It's been approved. Just change the world word. Don't say existential. So I did. But what I did was, what I've done, because the course is not for, it's for spring 2024. You know what I started to do? I started to look for all metaphors that are about existential philosophy without the word existential. I started to create stories that are about existential philosophy, but don't say the word existential. And I've been so excited because I could, but anyway, the course is going to speak about existential and focusing, everything is there. I just can't have it in the title. And the reason for it is that it's really unfortunate because our students already took the theory course, which I teach, and in it, we teach existential in the course. So they know what existential is, but she feels that it's an elective and students, when they pick, are not going to know what it is, that they know more what humanistic is, more than existential. So I kind of accepted it. But then I work in an extremely conservative university. So I was thinking about all the things that we talked about right now. And, you know, when we think of critical thinking and asking all of these questions, which, you know, I am going to address in the course, it could create issues for me, but I need to find ways to be able to have these dialogues with students that are conservative. I'm really grateful for them and what they're doing. And that's why I was able to kind of reflect and say, okay, but, you know, the creative part of me decided to do all this creative stuff without, my whole series is called Don't Say Existential.
The dirty word.
Yeah, don't say existential. Kind of like in Florida, don't say period. You can't say period anymore in Florida. Children are not allowed to learn about their periods. And don't say gay.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a very profound issue that Jean talked about a lot, about a name and all that the name has in it. That a name is like the flag until you can't wave the flag, right? Existential flag or the gay flag or the period flag.
You can't even raise the flag.
Right. But in a way that might be beneficial to describe something without the name.
Yes. Yeah.
And to have the essence and to deconstruct the names of things. Yes. You know, when we talk about capitalism, what are we really talking about? When, you know, or Marxism or all the things that
Or
we
even
talk
focusing,
about.
Jean, even focusing.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
Because I remember once a long time ago, I don't know, we ended up in Jean's house. He had invited us for discussion. And I think the issue of how did you come up with the word focusing came up, or I don't know. I asked him about how so many theories now in the present use focusing. And I get upset that they don't say that they've borrowed from focusing, they just use it. And he said to me, he said, you know, focusing is like this town, and then people visit and they create other towns, and then they create other towns. And then you have all these towns that have kind of focusing embedded in it. And that always stayed in me.
Mm.
I do appreciate when theories do give honor to him, like accelerated experiential psychodynamic psychotherapy gives a lot of honor to him. And so many others. Now, internal family system uses a lot of focusing, but I have not heard them mention Genlin. So I'll point those things out because I could see the focusing.
Richard Schwartz does mention focusing here and there, here and there.
Oh, here and there. That's a good one.
Yes,
okay.
Here and there. Yes.
I love it. I love that it's a town that people borrow from it and create other little towns.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love what you said. Gene was once asked, what would you rename focusing? He said, oh, I think I would call it unfocusing.
Okay, so this is Meg Glidewell. I wanted to say actually two things. It's interesting, we haven't touched on this, how many fields actually have very structured long-term practices, centuries old, to force, encourage, guide, better word, guide people to take a different perspective action, feeling like acting. So common if you're in an acting class, would you like a piece of cake? Now say that in 20 different emotional stances. The same thing with voice, with singing. Here, take these 7 notes and write them in 20 different ways. And of course, take that box and draw it from 40 different perspectives. So I think, so of course, in fact, I think sometimes I have done this focusing. But I'm just a focus. I'm the laity of focusing. I'm the normal citizen, not connected anyway professionally or through the Institute. Sometimes when I show focusing, in short, I'll just look at something in my house or just go through the world and I'll just tune in a focusing way to objects in a row, just like the acting student going through 20 different emotions. I will focus on different objects, kind of like light weightlifting. Anyway, so I wanted to say that about different perspectives. But back to the whole theme of what we were saying, I want to say about imagine. I think it's poetry, and it's a lovely overview. But I think part of looking at this, imagine a world with no governments, no religion, as people, I'm sure everyone here familiar with human history, sociology, etc. Once you get 3 people together, you start getting some kind of order. And I don't know, we need those structures, we need government. So I think the song is lovely, and it does point us in a direction in a loving, holding fashion. But it provides, one can't, and I believe should not, take it as a literal blueprint. Maybe I'm being a little literal here, but it is not a blueprint. It is an emotional embrace and salute and a vector toward many good things, but totally impossible. And of course, I just wanted to say that because we were not touching on that. So thank you. I am done.
Yeah, it's poetry. It's not a blueprint. Yeah.
But also, I have to say, when you say we need a government, I would say we need a different kind of government and more democratic, what we can achieve with our digital means. We can decide over things by voting digitally. It's very easy. When we say something, we always have to ask what kind of. And I would say we need a new kind of organization to organize our lives. So you can't take any concept as fixed, yeah, in its meaning. You need to expand it, yeah.
There's a section, I don't know where, but I read it, that Mark talks about management. And he says, management is needed in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
You need to coordinate. There need to be a conductor, need somebody who coordinates. But there's a huge difference between management that's organized to exploit and management that's simply coordinating the activities of production for the purpose of doing. So this is this difference between different kinds of government. Is the government involved in some form of exploitation and using people to accumulate, or is it simply helping people coordinate?
Yes. Right.
Totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's your. I'm concurring with your point.
Thank you for the clarification.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I didn't know how to raise my hand officially to have that cute little hand. I don't know.
Under reactions, if you press reactions.
Oh, thank you.
There's a hand to raise.
I was thinking about how much one has to sacrifice, whether it's imagine no possessions. Do I have to sell my house? And how many of our beliefs as possessions do we have to change? In other words, I'm bringing it back to the personal. It's so much easier to say the world, the government, you know, but yeah. So I think of this song Imagine, which is a great song, and I think part of the greatness, other than the melody, is that the words are so generic. You know, it's one of these things like a bumper sticker in a sense that you can't disagree with it in a way. I mean, you have to change a few of the lyrics or ignore them, as was said before, right? The imagine no religion. Well, you know, we didn't really hear that. You know, but the rest of it is really just, you know, so generic that you can just feel so beautiful, you know, to saying it and think, oh, I feel that way. But then, you know, just sometimes I just think there's so many things to think about. How we're talking about privilege, how much privilege are you willing to give up? How much privilege do you have to give up? What's enough? You know, I know so many people who give to charity, and you know, then a lot has been written lately about charity, the negative issues in charity. You know, one of them is, you know, the person who owns the money to give gets to decide which charity, you know, it's private ownership of doing good. So you don't really have to, you're giving up some money exactly as much as you decided, exactly in a way that you decided. It's still the you is in control of that privilege. And so
yes, I
struggle with that, because it may be that to change things seriously, and the system that we talk about, we're going to lose a lot. We middle class people who are here today, we may really lose a lot. You could also take a philosophical or a practical position. I think it's possible that there is really so much abundance, if it were done correctly, that you could keep, you know, a reasonable amount of your stuff and your family as private people that you're connected to, as opposed to anybody that you're connected to. You know, choose your friends. I mean, how much you know what I'm saying?
I mean, can I respond?
Please do.
Yeah, there's a story about Cuba. Oh, we're gonna share all this, and then when it gets down to we're gonna share our chickens. Oh no, not our chickens. We're not sharing our chicken. So, but I wonder if we ever think how much we lose by being so obsessed with possessions, and how much we would gain in terms of our quality of our connections with other people, the richness of our relationships, if we weren't so obsessed with just what we own. So that there could be a loss, there could be a gain in the quality of our whole society that we live in, and how we are with other people. So it may not all be a loss. Giving up may not always be a loss. As long as we don't give up. You're not going to give up my toothbrush. Or even maybe my house. I mean, that's personal.
Would you share your toothbrush, Charles?
What?
Would you share your toothbrush?
I might. Depends on the person, and but
exactly.
But exactly. But we do need to distinguish between private property and personal property. This is an important distinction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Private property is ownership of the means of production. It's the ownership of resources. It's not your house.
I wanted to say the same thing.
But you're talking about
controls the means of production.
Sorry, that's the ideology you're talking about. But right. I'm talking about real life. I'm talking about the fact that I own the place where I live in the East Village, New York City, and about 100 feet away are low-income projects all along Avenue D in the East Village. And,
You're wondering if you're going to have to give up your place?
I'm going to have to give up my place.
I don't.
No,
that's not what any of us are saying.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking. No, I'm not. I'm not just talking about it from what do you have to give up. I'm talking. I mean, let's talk about it from a focusing perspective. Let's just talk about a felt sense that I have when I'm sitting in my backyard. My brownstone, and I'm looking across the backyard at the people who are in subsidized housing, who are looking at me and occasionally have thrown things over the. I mean, it's real,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There are some people.
Listen, do we want to break out into groups? I don't know.
Jim has something to say.
Maybe we'll forego the groups. Okay.
I think there are some people who have no trouble imagining no possessions because I have no possessions. They need to imagine possessions. And they need to sing that song, and we can't impose our song on them.
Yeah, some people don't.
I don't think that possession means your toothbrush, your house, your bookshelf with all the books or whatever. What the point in Marxist theory is that the one who has the means of production, factories, control over resources, owning a piece of land where something is gold is extracted from the earth, that is what is meant in Marxism by possession, which gives the one who possesses it the means to control it. That's not your house. I think to even think about taking the house away from anybody is the most inhuman act I could imagine. And that is not how I understand this.
But I don't know if we're necessarily limiting ourselves to Marxism. I'm talking about, what if you have a nice big house and there are some homeless people, sleeping on the street in front of your house? Do you feel any either moral, I'm not talking about political ideology, do you feel any kind of, either we could call it moral imperative, or we could call it guilt, or we could call it a felt sense that you're somehow not helping by not just seeing those people and letting them, if you have a spare room or couch. I'm talking about the feelings. I'm not a Marxist, so I don't have to adhere to any of those things. I just get to have my felt senses. So I was just having one.
Yes, I love that. And I think, of course, obviously, maybe the purpose would be for those people to have a home and not just you.
Right.
Charles and Liz, I just want to say first, thanks everybody. These are fabulous ideas and things for us to think about. And Liz, especially thank you for bringing it home. And of course, we have a felt sense. We feel guilty. Of course we do. And so, it's something we all have in common and we all work with it. And in this space, I just am so thankful that so many people come together with different ways of seeing and understanding. And I see 3 people whose hands have been up a long time.
Oh, dear.
I was going to say that.
Could we all agree that those of us who have spoken will not speak again until
exactly.
Okay,
Thank
yes.
you.
I guess we're foregoing breaking out into groups,
Astrid, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Alistair's been waiting for the longest time before Astrid.
That's what I was wanting to say.
Alistair, please.
Okay, thanks. I'll just keep this brief. We've talked a bit about bringing focusing into the world. And I got certified last year as a focusing trainer. And I'm struggling a bit with that. So I'm going to be having meetings for other people who are also struggling, new focusing professionals. I'll put the details in the chat, and if you could tell your students or other people who might be interested, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lindsay.
I'm wanting to just make a comment or possibly a question about structure and privilege. On the notion of structure being something in a societal level, to also kind of note that there's structures right down to the level of the family, and that all the structures that are on a societal level aren't necessarily oppressive. There are some structures that are supportive. And all the structures that exist in a family level aren't necessarily supportive. Some of them are oppressive. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Wonderful point. And
I
go ahead.
would like to resonate with that, as well as with different types of government or decision making. And I want to quote a research which I thought was so interesting. I was friends with a professor of organizational psychology, and he was doing a research project with a company in the UK. They want to make profit, of course, and they were looking at types of organization that would increase profit. And so they decided they would make a leaner management and have management with, let's say, local groups that are formed around a certain tasks, and they govern themselves. So there would be engineers, workers, all people concerned with a certain project or with a certain product. And they made more profit when they had a self-organizing company, many small self-organizing units that put their intelligence to cooperative decision-making. Now they found that even though they made more profit, they came back after 2 years to have a post-research test. How is it going? I'm translating from German now, so forgive me my English at the moment. And they found that they were going back to the old system, even though they made less profit, because the managerial level couldn't give up power. This is a very interesting result in research that shows that the management can even tolerate having less profit, but not tolerate losing power in decision making and organization. And I thought that that was a very interesting example to think about. What kind of organization do we want? I mean, the local level, people felt comfortable to make their own decisions, and they were more productive and made more money. So I had a feeling, I had two teachings from that. That one is the issue a lot of the time is power. That seems to be very important. And the second one is, when people who are dealing with something concrete, a concrete situation, a concrete product, something they want to achieve, that they can be so efficient in self-organizing. So I thought that may have some insight into what we're discussing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that is an encouraging part here. Self-organizing can give good results. Different kind of organization. That's marvelous. And it seems there's the phenomenon that people do not want to give up power and control. It's all about power and control, I think. And that's somehow ingrained in our patriarchal society. It stems from way back, Stone Age, actually.
And we have
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Pauline raising her hand.
What's that?
Pauline raising her hand.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Pauline. Pauline? Oh.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's about 1:30 or 2 here in Ireland, so we're in different places around the world.
Yeah.
Pauline has risen her hand, but after that, what does she say? It's kind of that sense of responding almost like a musician, you know, jamming and really wanting to jump in, but without the words, you know, because the words are defining, you know. So, and yet we use words, you know. I suppose it's the reactions to ideas that around systems and systems of beliefs. So I suppose it's rather than there's all systems, that any identity that we have in a way is a position that maybe it's difficult to imagine not having an identity. You know, what would it be like? And I think in some way focusing is really a joy in that way, and in that community, that there is no need for identity in some way. You know, we reflect back and say, and we're of a generosity of spirit in that as well. You know, it's almost an imaginative approach, you know, that there's beings communicating, you know, and the generosity, I think, is really wanting to understand and deepen that connection. You know, it's like, can I give back what you said? Is this how I understand what you said? So it's around communication. And just maybe 2 more points or 1 more point. I'm not sure. Every time I open my mouth, I'm not really sure what will come out. And that's the as well, the creativity of the moment. Just what I heard about factories and production, it's like, well, that is a kind of a manufactured time, where that the person is a natural use of time in the moment. It's much deeper, and I think us focusers know that. You know, it's like coming down into a place that maybe be beyond time, and we have maps and models to say that time doesn't exist. So it's that resonance language, you know. So yeah, I think it's just like really wanting to be a part of something and needing words and identities and somehow getting tangled up in others in that. So anyway, thank you. And yeah, love to all. I think it's love. So yeah, just the sun on my back here.
You're really pointing to what focusing can give us that's special. Yes.
Yeah, it's the human potential and beyond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you. And yeah, love
Yes.
to all. Thank you.
I love that point and the idea that our opinions and our feelings are possessions, and that in focusing we can put down our possessions, knowing that we can pick them up again, those possessions, and then just reflect back to the other person.
Yes,
Right.
I loved, sorry, Lynn.
No,
I
go
loved
ahead.
that from last week, Lynn. You know, Jen always says that about the tools, putting them down in a bag beside us. And yeah, so I think we become more from this community because we're actually digging deeper. So anyway.
Yes.
It just occurred to me that the song could be clearing a space. John Lennon's song is about clearing a space.
I love that. I am realizing that we only have maybe about two or three more minutes. And I wanted to ask before we go, if I wanted to ask Gisela if you have any thoughts that you could share with us about a structure, societal structure, that would be different than capitalism and different than socialism. This third thing.
Very difficult question, huh?
I know. Maybe we could have a session about that, imagining a different structure